We'll wait just a moment while our participants, our family members, are making their way into our GATE parent meeting.
Thank you, everyone, for being here tonight. We're expecting over 700 participants tonight, so we want to make sure that we have just a minute to allow everyone time to log in, but we thank you for being here and being on time. My name is Carol Osborne. I'm the serve as the Associate Superintendent of Learning Support Services, and my colleagues will be facilitating and they will introduce themselves. I also just want to make people aware that we are going to record this meeting tonight because we know that not everyone is able to join us tonight. So we will be recording this session and posting the recording on our GATE website tomorrow.
We're just watching the participants roll in just now. We're almost up to nearly 300 staff and family members. It's nice to see you. Give us one moment so that we can allow as many people into our meeting this evening. Again, if you are just joining us, this is the GATE parent meeting for February 16th, 2021. And we are going to have a full house tonight, possibly up to nearly 900 participants. So we're about 300 right now. So just give us a quick moment as everyone is making their way into the meeting right now. Thank you for your patience. It is now 6:05. I'm wondering if we should go ahead and start.
Yes, thank you, Kimmy.
And as a reminder, tonight's meeting is being recorded. So if you do miss part of this meeting or you would like to watch it again, we will have this meeting posted on our GATE website, and that will be available along with the slides that you'll see at tonight's meeting. So first and foremost, welcome families, welcome staff, principals, district leaders. Thank you, Associate Superintendent Ms. Osborne, for setting up tonight's meeting. We are very excited to share with you some of the changes that are coming forward for our GATE program. My name is Kimmy Lochtefeld. I'm one of the executive directors in Learning Support Services. And tonight I'm also joined not only by Ms. Osborne, our Associate Superintendent, but also my colleague, Executive Director Doug Johnson. He is the Executive Superintendent for Director for Elementary Schools. Our purpose tonight is to share with you a shift we've made with our GATE program. And we will talk with you about why we are making some shifts here and why we're sunsetting the district GATE program. And we're moving toward an instructional approach so that each and every advanced learner has access to rigorous, high quality instruction. We have classroom teachers tonight who will be sharing with you how they are meeting the needs of their GATE and advanced learners in their classroom. And most importantly, we want to gather from you your feedback and questions about meeting your child's learning needs. So this is the agenda for tonight. And I want to pause here on the status of the GATE program beginning next year. And we want to be really clear that we are making a shift that is truly student-centered And as our district has been moving toward inclusive, personalized learning experiences for all students, the GATE program is something that we've been looking at very closely and thinking about how we will become a more fully integrated instructional approach to meeting the needs of all of our learners. So our GATE program will sunset for next year. And we want to talk more about why we're making that shift. I think that's really important because as we know, we have seen great opportunities and gains for students who are not necessarily identified GATE, who are making tremendous progress with their peers, with their peers who are identified GATE. And our focus is to really look at their strengths, their interests, and taking all students to the next level in their learning journey. We have very talented teachers who are implementing research-based instructional practices and have had ongoing professional development and are already showing those successes for advanced and gifted learners. So, and a more inclusive approach is to bring that to all of our students. And we are seeing the gains, and we have some data to share with you in just a moment, that's happening whether students are identified for the gifted program or in a homogeneous classroom. We're seeing that this is happening in our regular ed classes. And right now, I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Doug Johnson to share some of those data points on our learners, which drove our student-centered decision.
Good evening, everybody. I'm glad to have you with us this night. In our district, as reflected on this slide, every day our teachers work with more advanced learners than those who are GATE identified. In addressing this large number of advanced learners, both academically and socially emotionally, our teachers have successfully aligned their instructional practices to meet the needs of our advanced learners in their classroom. What's important to note is the way we currently organize our classrooms in middle schools creates inequities for learners who do not get access to homogeneous GATE classes due to limited space available. It is also important to note that the majority of our GATE identified students receive their instruction in heterogeneous GATE cluster classrooms, which may have from 6 to 8 GATE identified students in a classroom ranging from 26 to 38 students. In this light, teachers work with a wide range of student abilities every single day. Poway Unified has been very successful in meeting the needs of all learners, as evidenced via parent perception surveys, CASP scores, and in high school, with a number of students taking and passing the advanced placement courses and exams and completing the A through G requirements for access to UC and CSU schools. Consistently, parents have shared their high value of the rigorous, relevant, and relational instruction that is provided for all of our students. Families continue to come to our district so their children will benefit from the learning opportunities and experiences afforded to our students. Next slide. A few years ago, our district adopted this vision statement to create culture and conditions to empower world-class learners. As one can derive, this statement is aligned with our advanced learners' needs as well as all of our learners in our district. The practices embedded in this definition of world-class learners are aligned to our district-wide vision for all learners. In order to support our district's vision, over the last number of years, our teachers have engaged in a number of professional development classes aligned with meeting the differentiated needs of our students. This includes our GATE and advanced students as well. Our district tech and innovation department has supported teachers in providing for students project-based learning, as well as students having voice and choice in their lessons. This approach especially aligns with providing our GATE and advanced learners a variety of opportunities in processing complex and rich content and presenting learning products in unique and creative ways.
As I mentioned earlier, we are very appreciative to have some of our teachers joining us tonight who will share how they differentiate instruction in the general education classroom in order to meet the needs of their GATE and advanced learners. First, I'd like to introduce to you Mr. Jonathan Lemaster, teacher and English support teacher at Oak Valley Middle School. We'll have him join us in just a moment.
He's here.
Okay.
I'm here.
Hi, Jonathan. Welcome.
Hi. Can you hear me okay?
Loud and clear. Thank you for being here tonight. Can you share with us some of the ways that you differentiate instruction to meet the needs of your learners?
Absolutely. One of the things that was said is that Poway has high achieving students, and that's very true across the board in all schools across the district. And because we have high achieving students, as a teacher, as all of our teachers do, we work to differentiate our lessons to make sure that all of our learners are getting a rigorous curriculum that challenges them. And you might have heard of this term called scaffolding. When we think about scaffolding, when we look at a side of a building, scaffolding allows someone to move up the building, not down the building. And sometimes when people think about the word scaffolding or the strategy scaffolding, they think, oh, you're making it easier. And in fact, it's the opposite. We set high expectations for our learners, and then we put scaffolds in for students who want to be at a certain level, who are striving to be at a high level. And we put those scaffolds in to make sure that we move all kids up. And so I add a word to scaffold, and I call it scaffold up, which is just to help us understand that we're moving all of our kids up to the highest level that they can be by differentiating either expectations or providing different types of support so that students can reach the levels that we've set for them. We also have tools and resources as educators. In the beginning of the year, we can use things like time writing assessments or some reading assessments to evaluate where our students are. And by doing that, it sets us up for success because we know where our students are at the beginning of the year, and we can start setting up, all right, here's what our expectation is going to be for the class. Here's the expectation for kids who want to push a little bit harder. Now, I've taught AP, I've taught honors, I've taught GATE, homogeneous GATE clusters, and I've taught at San Diego State University. And one thing I will tell you is that all learners, no matter GATE or a non-GATE student, pushes to meet a teacher's expectations. So if we set high expectations for students, they will reach up and achieve those expectations. Now, some of our kids will need different kinds of scaffolds. I'm also an EL coordinator, so I know that language support is really important. And we have GATE kids who are EL learners, English language learners. So it's really important that we maintain those scaffolds, but also that if we set a high expectation, all kids are going to be there, no matter who they are. It doesn't matter if your teacher says, I believe in you, and I believe you can reach this level of success. Every child wants to do that. Every child wants to meet that level of success, no matter how high it is. And a lot of our teachers in our district tend to teach pretty high level. I've taught in other districts, and the material that we put in front of students typically is a lot more advanced. And we do that because we know our kids can handle it. And we know that we've got these wonderful, brilliant, beautiful children in our schools who want to be challenged, and the families want them challenged. And I think that we just do that as part of our culture at Poway. The last thing I want to share is it's important that learning is about raising the level of thinking. That higher level thinking is key to student success. No matter what it looks like, doesn't matter the class, as long as we're pushing students to reach that high level thinking, they're going to be successful in any environment. If we're assigning complex texts and we're increasing task complexity, then our kids are going to do very well in any situation, whether it be the next set of years of schooling or going into college or careers. But it's really about higher level thinking. It's about how can we challenge our kids to think deeply about the material that we're presenting. And all of our schools work really hard to make sure that we are bringing rigorous relevant, complex material to our students so that they can grow and they can learn and they can be successful with their next step, whatever that may be. So I feel very confident that we have the tools and the resources and the know-how and the belief that all of our kids are going to be successful in rigorous environments.
Mr. Lemaster, you pointed out a lot of important key points. I'm wondering if maybe for our families, if you could maybe paint a picture, describe a task, perhaps an example of what that might look like in the classroom.
Absolutely, yeah. So sometimes when we are increasing task complexity, it might just be as simple as requiring more sources if you're writing with sources in a research paper or making an argument. Some students need to use a minimum of 2 sources and other students need to use 4. And you might ask, well, why does that make that more rigorous? It makes it more rigorous because you have to control more sources and you have to be able to use those sources in different ways. When you use 2, it's kind of like, well, here are my 2 points. Well, maybe when you're using 4, you are now getting into maybe using one source to challenge or complicate what another source is saying, instead of it just being, here is the, here are my bodies of evidence and that's all I'm going to do. I might be bringing in more sources to complicate what I'm saying. So simply just changing the requirements makes something a bit more rigorous. You can also change the level of thinking. There's no problem with asking multiple types of questions for a particular task. So some students might be identifying and explaining while other students are analyzing and justifying. And remember, I talked about that levels of thinking. So if I have a text that we're reading and some of my students might be identifying maybe an argument and then explaining the evidence, other students in the same class with the same text could be analyzing the effectiveness of the argument and evaluating the credibility of the evidence that's being used. So right there, you're seeing a major shift in the way that the students are being asked to think. And that, I think, really gets back to, that's I think, the big point about having a student who is ready for the next level and a student who's still getting the standards, the basic standards, is can we push these kids to the next level? So changing question types or task complexity and changing requirements, whether that be additional requirements or having them have a different output, can really change the complexity and sophistication of an assignment.
Thank you for sharing what that might look like. You had also mentioned other tools and resources. What are some things that can be used for students when we talk about personalized learning? Are there some things that come to mind or things that you've used and your colleagues that really help students work at their personalized level? Can you share maybe a little bit about some of those kinds of resources and things that are available for our students as independent learners?
Yes, 3 things come to mind. One is giving a sample writing assessment at the beginning of the year can really help teachers understand the needs in the classroom and understand what types of tasks each student can handle. So a lot of times it takes a 30-minute timed writing, and now you're collecting all this data from your students and can really make some sound judgments about what comes next and in the next assignment. So I have a seating chart. When we used to meet in person, I had a seating chart and I had symbols, because if that seating chart ever got in the hands of a student, I would never want anyone to be able to decipher what it means. And depending on a student's writing ability, speaking ability, reading ability, I would have different symbols near that student, and it would let me know next assignment, this child is going to be challenged in this way or that way. And so it helped me, reminded me, because there's so many students sometimes, especially in secondary, it reminded me about how I can best serve this student and where this student is. Another one is just getting a reading sample, whether it be from something more formal like our newest program, iReady, or using MAP testing or another program, because I'm going to get a Lexile report. And so if I assign novels, I can now say, for you 5 students, I want your Lexile range to be here. And I can contact my librarian and I can ask him or her, hey, what's a good book list for this grade level at this Lexile? And I make those options available for the students so that now they're reading at their Lexile, which is if you don't know, is a term that we use to, well, Lexile is a company, and Lexile makes a number, puts out a number and says, this is what a student can read. Basically the difficulty of sentence length and vocabulary. This is what a child can handle. So if we match novels, which they're all recorded under Lexile, if we match a novel to their Lexile level, then we know that we're meeting them at their level and we can push them up by just I like to increase it just a little bit. So those are 2 very practical ways. A third way is interest lists, trying to find out, you had mentioned about personalization. Interest lists go a long way because it helps us understand what areas, what subject areas they're interested in. And then sometimes a lot of teachers like to give choice. So sometimes when we make activities more rigorous, it's because we give students choice and they go very deep into that subject matter because they're naturally passionate about it. So understanding what kids are interested in, allowing them to have some have some voice in what they're doing, raises the rigor, and it allows students to dig deeper when otherwise they might be bored and not want to dig into it, and they're not exercising that higher level thinking that they would if they were doing something that they had some voice in.
Mr. Lemaster, thank you so much for providing such a well-rounded explanation as a classroom practitioner about your process and ways that we can really customize learning for our students based on what we know about them, their interests, their strengths, and that there's voice and choice in those learning experiences. Thank you very much for joining us tonight.
You're welcome.
Next, I'd like to introduce Mrs. Tiffany Dyer. She is one of our teachers from Twin Peaks Middle School. Mrs. Dyer, welcome.
Hi, hello, thanks for having me.
Well, tonight we're talking about ways that teachers are able to make instructional decisions based on the needs of the learners in front of them, particularly students who are working at the advanced level, our gate identified students. What do you do when you have learners who have met or exceeded grade level standards?
So I guess my first approach is I want to meet students where they're at. And being in middle school, I teach 8th grade now. I taught 7th and 8th grade before, but we get a whole kit and caboodle of ability levels and where students are at. So what I like to do is give some sort of pre-assessment. So say we're looking at a content standard, let's say, for instance, it's figurative language, and we're looking at metaphors because I teach language arts. And so I'll give a pre-assessment to get a gauge of where students are at. Typically, they filter into 3 groups. So let's say if we go for the metaphor example, I'll have students that still have trouble identifying them or understanding the definition of them. So that'll be, group 1. Group 2, they can identify them, but maybe they still struggle with how authors use them, why authors, use them as their choice in writing. So that would be my group 2. Group 3, they've mastered what they are. They've mastered why authors use them, but now I'm going to challenge them in making it part of their craft. So it's the application stage. So then now they have to put on the author's hat and start incorporating those in. So at all the different levels are all learning the same concept, but they're just learning it in the way that suits their ability and need at that time. And so I frequently give pre-assessments, usually in forms of like a Google form, and it's just a pulse. And I tell students, you have to show me what you know and what you don't know, because that's how I can better help you in achieving, meeting, exceeding that content standard. So I would say that's definitely my first approach. I heard Mr. Lemaster talk about choice and voice, and I am a huge proponent of this. So oftentimes students, especially in middle school, they're, coming into their own with their interests. and they get passionate about things, and you want to make sure you fuel that passion. And so oftentimes they can like research out a topic. Oftentimes they want to try to demonstrate their knowledge in a different way. So towards the end of this year in 8th grade, we usually do like a national parks project, and students take a virtual tour of many different parks, and then they get to choose which park has some interest or appeal to them. They dive into that park, understand the research behind it, look at the needs for that park, and then they have choice. So we have a visitor guide or a visitor center, like almost like a science fair, if you want to think about it that way. So each student is sharing out their national park, but they have choice on how they're going to display their knowledge. So they can go, old school poster board, and that works for them. Some students want to make like an informational video, and that works for them. Some have strengths in public speaking, and they want to give a speech to people as they walk around in the visitor center style. So it's really up to the student on how they want to demonstrate their knowledge on the content. And like Mr. Lemaster said, you've got students where all year it's like, I'll just do the writing piece. I'll just do the writing piece. So it's having that conversation, say, you know what, you've done the writing piece 2 times. What if you make your writing speech into a little video? There's this great program XYZ that you can use, and it's help fostering them to take their learning and just bump it up a notch. And having that dialogue with students empowers them to want to try something new. Maybe they haven't approached yet.
So I want to go back to the idea around instructional groupings and how you are always assessing your students' needs. I'm wondering, are those groups pretty static or are they flexible?
They're flexible because I think it depends on the content. Because again, as middle school, we get feeders from all different elementaries. And so you're going to have students that have mastered one thing, but not something else. So somebody that's, great at metaphors may struggle with illusion. And so it's very flexible, and we weave them together. And so that's why I tell them, the pre-assessment is not for a grade at that moment. The pre-assessment is you're letting me know what you already know. Because, hey, if you already know it, then you don't have to go through the definition of this and identify them, right? I'm going to challenge you to take it the next step up and use it. And so some of the items of content they've mastered, and so that's the application part. But sometimes, they need group 2, and they need to look at they need to look at how an author uses them, or whatever the content is at that time that we're looking at. So I would say they're they're fluid for sure.
And I appreciate how responsive you are to the needs of your learners, and that you are making those adjustments basically in real time based on what you're seeing the students able to do and what they need next in their learning. And I also want to thank you and Mr. Lemaster for really bringing up the important fact that as teachers, we have to know what our students' needs are, what are their passions, their interests, helping to guide them. And ultimately, we want our students to be agents of their own learning. We want them to be independent learners. And we know that we're working towards that mission and vision about being world-class learners. So what I'm hearing today is really examples and ways that teachers are paying very close attention to the learners in front of them, regardless of what label they might have, whether a student is learning English, a student is has a gate identification. It's really about what assets does the student bring to the classroom, and how do we build on those? And that's really exciting. And I really appreciate the voice and choice, because ultimately our students, we're fostering lifelong learners. So I want to thank Mr. Lemaster and Mrs. Dyer for sharing insights into the classroom to help us understand what are the thinking processes that you take into close consideration, the needs of your learners, and really scaffolding not only instruction, but also the assignments as well, and providing just those rich learning experiences where kids are collaborating together and able to use all of their creativity to show what they know. So thank you so much.
Thank you for
Right
having
now-
us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Right now I'm going to have my colleague, Mr. Doug Johnson, introduce our elementary teachers.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you again, middle school teachers, for sharing how you scaffold and differentiate your instruction in the general education classes. And today we have Miss Capriola Jusa, who is going to be sharing what that might look like in a general education classroom in elementary school. Welcome, and thank you so much for joining us this evening.
All right, hello, there we go. I'm not,
There you are. There you are.
am I being seen? I can't see myself. I could just see Doug.
You are seen. You are seen.
Okay, great.
Heard.
Then I'll just start talking. It's a little bit weird not having faces. At least I'm used to elementary. We're seeing our faces here. So, so I'm going to talk about a few things, and Mary's going to touch on some others. And I just want to say, like Jonathan and Tiffany, there's a lot of choice that we look at in elementary school too, giving kids that voice and choice and growing towards making those choices and making choices that are good fits for them and that are going to expand their learning and also give them a chance to be creative and do enrichment kinds of things. So I know Mary's going to talk a little bit more about project-based learning. So I'm going to touch just on a couple things with choice in language arts, and then talk more about math. So first, just an example in 4th grade. Almost every classroom across California reads The Island of the Blue Dolphins. And when we read that, we do all kinds of things and connect it to history and all of this. And it's at a high level in 4th grade, so it's great, but the other kids need support. But our GATE students, they need that enrichment. At the end, all the kids take a quick quiz on it, but then they get a choice board that they get to choose from, and they can do all kinds of different things. So some kids did some straightforward animal reports because there's so many animals that they learn about, and then they drew something, and that was it. That was their part, right? But other kids designed a whole Jeopardy board, wrote all these different topics, questions, and had lots of variety there. And some even created all the graphics and everything. While others created their own original poems, and others created scale drawings of the island. So real variation and choice, but to take that extension and make that enrichment. But there's also those safe places for other kids who weren't ready for that more, but were very comfortable and happy to show what they could do. With math, I just want, like, I know, as a GATE parent and a teacher that are looking at those kids and really might make sure those kids aren't missing out within the general ed classes, that even though we have heterogeneous classes, that we have these mixed groups, we're still looking at, that doesn't mean that we don't pay attention to those kids and that we never get them in groups. In elementary school, we do a lot of small group, a little harder right now with COVID and small grouping, but we do still make a lot of small groups. And like Tiffany and Jonathan were saying, we take little assessments, or we take quizzes, and we take things to make us and go, who do we need to group together? How can I help enrich that person and give that other person, that other student, what they exactly need? So for example, right now we're in the middle of area and perimeter in math. Okay, so area and perimeter is one of those kinds of subjects in 4th grade that kids are supposed to show mastery. They've already been introduced somewhere else and they have to show mastery. So so some kids are going to come in because this was introduced before. They're going to come in really comfortable, being able to do lots of different things with area and perimeter, and they're ready. And they can show me that and we can move on. So like today, I did a quick check. I have my little notes of who's been, I have 3 little groups. And so I have a group that's ready to go on, and we're going to do something to expand that knowledge. I have other kids who are pretty comfortable, but they're still not understanding the difference between using square centimeters or centimeters and those labeling factors. And what is that really behind that? So they're missing something. And then there's others who are confusing area and perimeter, and they need that support. So there's a lot, those kids I need to group in one group and give them that reinforcement in others. Meanwhile, I'm going to do some hands-on activities with some, I'm going to just do some practice with others. And these other kids who show me that they're already at mastery, we're going to go on to do surface area. We're going to do area and perimeter and really area of triangles and parallelograms that we wouldn't necessarily get yet in 4th grade. So we're going to expand and extend. The other thing that I do a lot of, which I think helps all kids, is that we do number talks. So every day that we have a little starting question, and for every kid can take it to where they need or want. And sometimes it's introducing something ahead of time so that when we get to that topic a couple months down the line, we've already dabbled in it. But for example, last week we had a question, kind of like your Sesame Street, which one of these things doesn't belong, but it was 4 numbers. And we had 29, 31, 73, 99. So some kids said 29 doesn't belong because that's the only one that has an even digit. Okay, good. We're using digit, we're using even. These are things we've talked about. Another kid says 31. Because it's the only number that if you add up the digits, because we play with numbers all the time, that doesn't create a 2-digit number. Okay, it would equal 4. The others would all be a 2-digit. Okay, great. The other kid says 99 because all the others are prime. Oh, okay. And so then we talk about factoring, we talked about and that's something that at this point in the year, we're reinforcing. So all these things, we are able to have and extend and expand these discussions that we've had at various times, and it builds on their ability to explain their thinking. We're doing most of it orally, but it gets them ready to do it in writing, because when we get to like state testing, SBAC, things like that, the kids have to be able to explain their thinking. And I'll tell you, our GATE kids, and I know that they have, sometimes they could tell you, they just know the answer, but they have a really hard time explaining it. And so that gives them that experience, that verbal experience. And so then they are able to really be those role models at different times. They're able to use that specific academic language. And so you can really give them kudos for that, but they each get to have different things. And each kid, I try to write down what they say, and they get to be validated that way as well. So those are just a few little things. I could give you 100 more, but teachers are always constantly looking at what kids need, how I can enrich them. And it doesn't have to be always some planned activity like I'm going to be doing with the area and perimeter and surface area tomorrow. It can be just on the spot in the middle of a number talk. Like last week we did prime factorization. And so everything, and then that led us to the exponents, so all these things can be done within the day, within our groups, where we're not just, not homogeneous in our heterogeneous groups. That's
Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing and those a multitude of strategies and really knowing your kids and getting that pre-assessment and then taking them where they are and scaffolding up to higher levels of content and concept development. So thank you so much. We really, really appreciate that. And I'd like to turn it over to Mrs. Mahalik, and she's going to share some ideas that she puts into play in her general education classroom.
Thank you. I like to differentiate learning in my classroom by using project-based learning. And one of my favorites is towards the end of the year, the kids will be given the essential question, how can we make Westwood even more awesome than it already is? And so the students are able to work individually or with a partner or in a small group. And the first thing they do is they either on their own or by polling other students identify a need that they see at Westwood. And then they research solutions to it. After that, they get to make a prototype, which is always fun to see what they come up with. And then after they've done all that, they get to present their findings in whatever format they want. So some kids make wee videos, some kids do iMovies, some do Google Slides, some use a trifold board, some make out brochures to hand out to their classmates. For example, a few years ago, one of the groups identified having their water bottles on their tables was a problem because there's not very much room on the tables and sometimes water bottles got knocked over. So the kids made a prototype of an attachment that went on their seat that not only held a water bottle on one side, but held their pencils in the other. And it was a really creative solution to a problem that the students identified. Another group came up with, they wanted to see the character counts traits in more areas on the playground. So they wanted to paint the character counts traits on the end of the handball courts. And they used Legos to make the prototype. And at the end of the year, they said, well, can we really do that? And I said, sure, we can do that. So during the summer, they came in and they helped paint the ends of the handball courts with the character counts traits. And they thought that was so cool because they were like, fifth graders, we've left a legacy at Westwood. And they were so excited about it. I find project-based learning an excellent way to differentiate because it allows students to challenge themselves, be creative, and come up with innovative solutions according to their abilities and their interests. And very importantly, it also addresses, a wide range of ELA standards and math standards. So they get to do all of this and they're learning so much and challenging themselves and having a really great time doing it. And they're very engaged in their learning. And I try to do a couple of projects every year. And I really find that it is a way for kids to really show their knowledge and they can, really, really challenge themselves. And I think that's very, very important, especially for our GATE students.
And to reemphasize with all of our teachers, the work that we're doing in our classroom is a beautiful byproduct of the training and professional development that we have put into play in our district over the years that have, again, given teachers more tools in their tool belt to, again, provide different pedagogy and strategies to meet the needs of all learners. And as you've shared, even GATE and advanced learners, very much so in our classrooms. We thank you all so much for joining us this evening and sharing your expertise in your classroom teaching. Thank you so much.
Thank you, teachers. We really appreciate all that you do for our students, and thanks for coming out tonight and sharing what you do in your classrooms. I know we've shared a lot of information tonight, and unfortunately in this venue, it's very difficult to do question and answer. So our solution is to provide you with an opportunity to share your thoughts, questions with us through thought exchange. And in just a moment, we'll walk you through how to do that so that you can share with us all the things that are bubbling up for you. So I know some people may have joined us a little bit later in tonight's presentation. And again, just reiterating that we're sunsetting our GATE program. And what you heard tonight from our teachers is really an instructional approach inside all of our classrooms. So we're really looking at the knowing our learners, being able to pinpoint where they're at, being able to differentiate the level of instruction, the process, the content, the experiences, so that we are meeting the needs of our learners at the elementary and middle school level. And like one of our teachers said, we do not ignore the needs of our students who are meeting or exceeding standards. In fact, we pay close attention to make sure that we're keeping them engaged and allowing for all students to be able to own their learning and have voice and choice and really reach their full potential. So what does that mean? It means that everything that you heard our teachers say, all the amazing things that they designed for our students, that stays in place. In fact, we're expanding that. We're seeing that works, and it broadens opportunity and access for a broad and challenging curriculum for all of our learners. So that means that we don't need to test students for entrance into a GATE program. Look at how closely our teachers are monitoring. It's not one test that defines a student's success. It's really knowing where our kids are at, and teachers are monitoring and determining what their kids need all along the way and making those adjustments. And then also, no longer do we need to put all of our students who have been identified GATE into a homogeneous classroom or advanced classroom or cluster setting, because right now you see that it is working and that kids need to be able to work with all different kinds of people and be able to collaborate and to make meaning together and do these incredible projects with each other. We're preparing our children for the real world and the world of work and to make our world a better place. And so we've moved to this inclusive approach. And that means that we're paying even that much more attention to the needs of all of our learners. So again, I think that's important for you to understand. If you joined us a little bit later in tonight's presentation, it is being recorded and this will be posted on our GATE webpage. So I want to have our Associate Superintendent, Ms. Osborne, join me in helping us think through some of the myths. There are myths around the GATE identification and the program itself. And I want to assure you that your child is not losing anything. And so do you mind helping me out, Ms. Osborne?
Happy to. Thank you.
Okay. Well, I'm going to give you the first myth, and that is if my child is not in GATE, their learning needs will not be met.
Thank you. So I think we saw some of the data from the 2019 California Assessment of Student Performance. And what that shows is that we have many very advanced students in Poway Unified, and not all are GATE identified. And so our teachers, as we've heard tonight, have deepened their knowledge in pedagogy in order to meet those individual needs of our students. In the past, we've been working with the GATE coordinators and we talked about what is the program at your school. Oftentimes there are after school enrichment things. Those activities will continue, but there is no separate GATE curriculum that our teachers have used in the past. And as you've heard, even the homogeneous GATE classes, it's about the knowledge and skill and disposition of our teachers who make the opportunity for learning rich and rigorous. And so it's really about what are the tools we now have, and there are so many. We are using iReady this year. We used MAP in the past, but we will continue to have assessments that help teachers understand where their students are and continue to provide stretch and opportunities for, as Dr. Phelps always says, lifting the ceiling off the building so that there is opportunity to go beyond just what everyone else is doing.
All right, here's the next one. Students who are GATE identified all have homogeneous GATE classes in middle school.
So that is a myth because there's typically one section per grade level and it's a lottery. And I know that I get phone calls, our principals get phone calls because there is typically great disappointment when parents our GATE students do not all get into the homogeneous GATE class. However, the students at one of our schools, there's over 400 GATE students at the middle school, and all of those students have access to rigorous learning opportunities from their other teachers, not just the homogeneous GATE class. So it's not, there has never been a guarantee. And typically in one grade level, say sixth grade, 36 kids would get into the homogeneous GATE class. So our goal has always been to ensure our teachers, every teacher, is able to know their students and meet them where they are and continue to challenge them each day.
Now we get this next one a lot, and that is, I have a middle schooler. If they're not in GATE, then they can't take the compacted math class or have an advanced pathway. Can you speak to that one?
Yes, so we actually just reviewed this process for math. GATE identification has not been a consideration for the math acceleration pathway. We look at multiple measures and including a growth mindset measures, and we want to make sure that our students are able to be a good fit for an accelerated math pathway. So GATE identification is not part of that consideration. We will continue to have the math accelerated pathway so that students at middle school can take Integrated Math 2, which is a 10th grade course. They can take that in their freshman year and they can have access to Integrated Math 1 at middle school.
Okay, this is the other one that we hear a lot as well. And my child has to be gate identified in order to take those advanced placement courses in high school.
So Poway Unified several years ago made significant changes to stop what we call tracking at our high school. And so that all of our high school courses have open access. Any student can sign up on their course request forms and sign up for any class. They can take any AP course and honors course. They are open access courses. In fact, high school counselors and administrators often remind me they don't look at gate identification at all because of the open access.
And I think too, there's a perception that universities, like to see students who are gate identified, and they might even have a better chance getting into a top university. Is that true?
No, universities and colleges look at your high school transcript and your essay, and they are not looking at your gate identification. That's not part of the application process.
Very good. I think it's really important. Thank you so much for adding some clarity around some of the common myths that we happen to hear and phone calls that we get on a regular basis about concerns if a child doesn't make it into the GATE program or isn't GATE identified. So I think that here you can see there's no negative impact on students. And like we heard our teachers talk about, it's really about ensuring all kids are reaching their full potential. So there are no barriers, artificial barriers that we're putting in the way for our students to reach their full potential. As I mentioned earlier, we have an opportunity for you to share your thinking and let us know what's bubbling up for you through Thought Exchange. And Ms. Osborne, I'd be happy to click through some of these slides so that we can let parents share what's on their mind.
All right. I know many of you have probably used Thought Exchange for our LCAP, which is coming soon. But tonight we wanted to engage to give you some voice and hear from you about your thoughts about how we can continue to meet the needs of your children. Next slide, please. So we've created a Thought Exchange just for our GATE community. What questions or thoughts do you have about your child's learning needs as we go forward? And so thinking about everything you've heard here tonight, we would like to, we're going to put a link up. What questions or thoughts do you have about your child's learning needs? So go ahead, click to the next slide. Thank you. Just a reminder how Thought Exchange works. You'll be able to log in, answer just a couple of questions, and then you can share your thoughts or your questions in response to the question that I just shared. And then you can submit as many thoughts as you'd like. There's typically share a thought and then why this is a thought or a question. And then after you submit a couple of thoughts, you can go to the star section and you can look at what other people are thinking. And if you agree or strongly agree with something that someone has posted, you give it 4 stars. If you disagree with what someone says, you might give it 1 star, because what this will do is a crowdsourcing tool that will have the top thoughts come to fruition. And then you can also, through transparency, you can discover and see what are some of the top thoughts that are coming through. So Kimmy, if you want to just click to the next slide so they can see. If you use your camera right now on your phone with this QR code, it'll take you to the Thought Exchange. And we are going to also post this link and get it sent out to you so that and we'll leave this open for several days so that I know that when new information comes, processing it and thinking about it, sometimes those questions that come to them in the middle of the night, like I do, you will have time to add additional thoughts. You'll also have time to go and see what other people are saying. And then we will be posting the top thoughts on the GATE website because we want you to see what the Thought Exchange conversation reveals. So we will be sending this out. We saw tonight that we had about 350 people log in. Right now we're at just under 300. We want to make sure that everyone that did RSVP has access to this. So we'll be keeping this Thought Exchange open for a few days, probably through Saturday, so that all of you have a chance to share your thoughts and see what other people are thinking and participate in the virtual conversation.
So right now we'd like to close out our meeting. We'd like to thank all of you for attending tonight's informational session. Thank you for entrusting us with your child. And we look forward to continuing our partnership to optimize your child's education in the Poway Unified School District. Again, please visit us at our district gate website where you can find a copy of this recording as well as our slides and the Thought Exchange link. Thank you so much for coming, and we'll see you next time. Good night.